These are all insiders in one form or another. Five of the six are hardline conservatives, and there's one reformist. And the consensus is that the reformist has been approved just for a little bit of excitement and to increase voter turnout.
Yeah, that's interesting. Four women tried to nominate but were denied. Can a woman actually run for president in Iran?
There's been some constitutional debate around the issue because of the way the Constitution is worded. But the consensus is that constitutionally, women are allowed to run. Historically, however, none of the women who have declared their candidacy have yet been approved by the Guardian Council, which, as we've seen over the last several elections, has moved increasingly to the right.
Yeah, so it's no surprise that they would have not necessarily been supportive of a woman standing for the role, even if it were just a token gesture.
That's correct, yes. What we see in Iran is, in the Islamic Republic, is a level of systemic misogyny and discrimination against women, which has gotten increasingly worse over the last several years as the country's hybrid authoritarian political system has become increasingly authoritarian.
Yeah. Mehran, I'm interested in, you're talking about hopefully to encourage voter turnout. How does an election like this actually even how is it run? Do they hold debates? How much interest is there amongst the public?
Historically, presidential elections in Iran have actually generated considerable voting turnout once the candidates have been approved by the Guardian Council. And this was the case until 2021. And in 2021, the election of President Raisi was widely considered to have been engineered by the Guardian Council to produce a particular turnout. And as a result, we only saw about just under 50% voter turnout. So depending on what transpires between now and June 28, when elections are held, whether or not the debates are as spirited as they've historically been in the past, we might still be surprised. Iranian politics is notoriously hard to predict and can often be quite surprising.
And that's an interesting point you make, because I would have imagined that the council's not going to want any surprises. I mean, as you point out, there are five hardliners. But is it ultimately a fairly free and fair election?
Once the candidates are approved, historically, the elections have been free and fair. But of course, structurally, the elections have to go through this really rigorous, opaque, and quite unclear vetting process. The criteria is quite unclear as to who can run and who's not going to be approved. But once the candidates are approved, I think the election is generally considered fair and free.
So who do you think might prevail?
Well, of the five hardliners, two are quite famous. One is the Speaker of the Parliament, Ghalibaf, and the other is a former presidential candidate and another renowned hardliner named Jalili. So those are the two front runners. But again, depending on how the debates turn out, depending on who drops out, and historically we've seen one or two candidates drop out in favor of others, we might be in for some excitement over the next couple of weeks.
Oh, that's interesting. Ultimately, though, it's not likely to change the course of the direction of the government.
Yes and no. The president has some limited purview in the Iranian political system. And we saw, for example, former President Rouhani signed a nuclear accord. Raisi tilted Iran towards the east. And so the president isn't as powerless as is generally assumed. And if the president has some gravitas and some set plans, we might still be surprised.
Interesting. Well, we'll watch closely. Mehran, thank you very much.
Thank you.